The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Senator Lynwood Lewis with us today. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be with you, Woody.
Senate District 6, a very beautiful, diverse, geographically diverse, demographically place. Talk to us about it for a moment.
It is. It is challenging in its breadth to represent. We go from the Maryland line on Virginia's eastern shore down the peninsula, the two counties. Cross over, we pick up one precinct just over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel in Virginia Beach, and then we take in roughly half the city of Norfolk, and then we go through 64, up 17 to pick up Matthews. So it takes, if you start the Maryland line and go all through the district, it would take probably about 4 hours to get to Matthews.
So you've got a lot of windshield time when you want to visit your constituents.
Absolutely. But it is, as you said, it's interesting from a policy-making standpoint to have such a diverse district. Challenging but interesting.
So we're in the short session, the last couple of weeks. There have been a lot of visitors this session.
Really
I assume your office has been inundated just like anyone else.
We have had a large amount of visitors. It's always great to see people engaged and who want to come to their capital to either press an issue or see what's going on and how the government works. But you're correct. We have seen an uptick in visitors here in the Capitol in general. The clerk's office reports that statistically it's a significant uptick.
So how's the economy in your district? You know, everybody's been burdened with sequestration the last 6 or 7 years. I guess there's some hope that sequestration will not occur again given the new administration, but one never knows. Talk to us about the economy in your district.
Well, and you are correct. Sequestration a few years ago obviously dealt a significant blow to Hampton Roads. There is another round scheduled to occur in October unless Congress can get its act together and act responsibly on the budget. And so, yes, we are very fearful because of our reliance, overly so, on federal defense spending and federal spending in general in the Hampton Roads region, which is a large part of my district. So, we're hopeful that Congress can do the right thing, the responsible thing, and put out a budget that doesn't use these meat cleaver approach to our defense spending. So we'll see.
Military installations and defense contractors, I take it, are the ones that are hurt by sequestration.
Yes, absolutely. And we essentially have three pillars of our economy in the Hampton Roads region. We have tourism, we have military defense spending, and we have the port and the port activity. And so to the extent that either one of those pillars is obviously negatively impacted, and again, sequestration is a tremendously negative impact, our region recoils from that, and so we're fearful, and that's why it's also important. And when the governor goes around talking about the new Virginia economy, Hampton Roads needs to be a real cheerleader in that effort because we need to diversify our own regional economy as well as the Commonwealth's economy.
And of course, Go Virginia is still in its infancy. I know there was a bill passed last year. The business community is heavily involved in that effort in terms of regional cooperation. How's that going from your point of view?
Well, I'm a big proponent of the Go Virginia concept. I think the business community, and really starting in Hampton Roads, was the real incubator for most of the ideas behind the Go Virginia process. The business community became frustrated with how we approach economic development in the Commonwealth and thought there was a better way to encourage regional economic development, and so they came up with the Go Virginia concept, which the legislature embraced last year. The governor, unfortunately, pulled back a little bit on the funding in his suggested amendments to the budget. The Senate version of the budget has restored a significant portion of those cuts. So it is in its infancy, and I think it offers some real hope on a regional basis for economic development in the Commonwealth.
You mentioned the Port of Virginia and its importance in your district, but throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I understand that it's the deepest port on the eastern seaboard, able to accommodate now those large Panamax, post-Panamax ships that will be coming into that port.
Right, but we need to go deeper. We need to go down to 55 And that's the next big hurdle, the next big thing economically for our region, is making sure that we proceed quickly on this 55-foot channel depth, because we have to, if we act boldly and significantly in the next couple of years, we can really cement our position as the preeminent port on the East Coast. And so the governor has been very supportive of that effort. The Assembly, on a bipartisan basis, was supportive in some significant capital investments last year. And so we still have one big capital investment. The port's going to need about $2 billion worth of capital needs in the next 10 years. That includes what we've already done at Norfolk International Terminals, about $350 million, another $300 million or so at improvements at Virginia International Gateway, and then the dredge project, and then additional infrastructure beyond that.
And of course, transportation is critical in terms of the port, because if you can't get trucks in and out, those post-Panamax ships won't make a difference at all.
Absolutely. The shipping industry is very unforgiving. Time is money, and they depend on ease of movement to and from the ports. And to the extent your locality, your region cannot provide that, they will go elsewhere. Very disappointed to see that we were not able again this session to fix the sales tax, the gasoline tax floor. That was a drafting error in 2013 when we passed the Omnibus Transportation Bill. We've tried for 2 years now. Senator Wagner carried the bill. I signed on as a co-patron to it to fix that. It's costing the Hampton Roads region about $21 million a year, and we can do a lot with that $21 million, and it's going to ultimately drive up the cost of these big projects that we have to do. So sorry to see that didn't make it through this year.
Talk to us a little bit about that in more detail. There was a drafting error that resulted in a lack of funding, I take it.
When we shifted over to essentially what is a sales tax on gasoline in 2013, we put a floor in so that we would at least know that there was a bottom to the revenue. We would have a bottom beyond which we could not go. And it was pegged at $3.17 a gallon. And so we knew we were always going to have the revenue at least at that level. Nobody saw gasoline dropping the way it has. But in addition to that, unfortunately, the regional gas tax components of the bill did not have the floor language. So when gasoline prices drop, our revenues suffer as well. And again, when you've got gasoline now around $2 or even below that in some instances, it hurts. And so the estimate is about $21 million a year it's costing us in our Hampton Roads region for projects.
So what does that mean in terms of the ability to fix the bridges and tunnels in the Hampton Roads area?
Well, the next thing for us will be the HRBT expansion, the next big project, and that's going to be a $3 to $4 billion project, and it's going to impact on the cost of that project because we're going to have to use bonding authority and tolls and public-private partnership in some form or fashion to do these big projects. And so it's essentially going to drive up the cost of these projects.
Well, thank goodness, I assume the city and the region has a stellar bond rating. Of course, the Commonwealth does, so at least you can borrow money at low interest rates.
Right, that is helpful, very helpful.
Talk to us about other parts of your district. Are they more rural?
Yes. Virginia's Eastern Shore, the two counties, Accomack and Northampton, and Matthews County are very rural counties. Northampton and Matthews County are probably most similar in their economic makeup and their size. But yes, very rural. Accomack and Northampton, big agricultural producers, in addition to aquaculture, in addition to commercial watermen. Matthews County less so on the agricultural side, but just as active on the commercial waterman side.
What about menhaden fish? Is that part of your district as well?
Well, the bay obviously is a big impact on my district, and so the health of the bay and the menhaden fishery, controversial that it is also a big part of the vitality of the bay. So always concerned about that on both sides of the issue. I have supported a shift over of the management of the fishery from the General Assembly to the VMRC. We've not been successful in that effort yet, but I think that's where it needs to be. And as the Chesapeake Bay Foundation always says, we just need to follow the science in managing the fishery, and the best people to do that is the Virginia Marine Resources Commission.
So right now you've got 140 members of the General Assembly who are playing scientists.
Right, exactly. And you can imagine we're probably in 6-week and 8-week sessions not very adept at managing a fishery like that, and particularly considering that management decisions sometimes need to be made in the off season and when we're not here.
Right, right.
And so it's just better, and I think the public has more trust when you have the VMRC managing the fishery.
Now, are there still a number of small farms in your district, or has that been taken over by larger companies?
No, we still have a number of large farms on the eastern shore. Well, small farms on the
Right.
eastern shore. There are also some large corporate farms as well, dealing with we have tomatoes and other vegetable crops that are larger, but mostly there are still small farms around there.
What about forestry, especially timber?
Some timber, that's not as big as it used to be, or as it has been in the past. But we have some timber operations there as well.
Now, the other thing you have, which is very special, is Wallops Island.
Absolutely, that is when the governor talks about the new Virginia economy. Commercial space and aerospace activities in general are going to play a big part in that new Virginia economy. Both budgets, the Senate budget and I think ultimately the final budget, will provide for some significant additional infrastructure improvements at the commercial spaceport and also at the unmanned aerial vehicle site that we have established there. So excited about that.
So talk to us a little bit more about that particular site. You're talking about the use of drones and integrating them into commercial areas, so to speak.
Exactly. The FAA has designated the Wallops Island site as one of its 6 official test sites for trying to figure out how we test and integrate this tremendous technology into civilian activities. And so there's going to be a lot of activity up there by government, but also by private entities as we try and figure this out. So we've got a new, courtesy of the Virginia General Assembly, a $6 million drone runway there. And we also are going to try and do some things, hopefully with this new infrastructure money, for unmanned sea-going drones. And also perhaps some of these drones use upright vertical takeoff. So we're trying to make sure we can accommodate that as well.
Besides funding issues, there's been discussion or dialogue the last few years here in the General Assembly about privacy issues around drones, as well as the fact that apparently some localities may want to regulate them as well.
Right, and that has been controversial. Again, primarily on the privacy issue front, we need to be careful not to send a message to this burgeoning industry that we're not friendly to them. And that's what those of us who think it holds great economic development potential are very concerned about. So we look at those bills with a sort of a careful eye.
Commercial Space Flight Authority, I know you have some legislation dealing with a 6-year strategic plan.
Right. We have, because of the great potential that we see there, we want to make sure that we're on solid footing and that we adopt really sound business principles in the way the spaceport is governed. So the authority, the director of the authority is going to have to present every 4 years. He's going to have to present a 6-year plan, and the bill contains some requirements as to what's to be contained in the 6-year plan, and also one of the requirements is it has to contain a strategy for funding the improvements and the expansion that needs to be performed up there. In addition to that, we have put some strictures on who can serve on the Spaceflight Authority board. The idea being that we want to make sure it's business focused and people with appropriate experience to really build upon the successes of the spaceport.
Are there programs to get youngsters interested in spaceflight at the authority there?
There is a Spaceflight Academy there that has actually been in existence for some time. But as you might imagine, due to the higher profile that the commercial spaceflight facility and Wallops Island, the NASA facility, has been enjoying, the attendance there has been more robust in recent years. So it offers a great opportunity for young people in the summertime to go there and really get firsthand experience about what it's like to be involved in aerospace and space.
Working waterfront development, I think you have some legislation dealing with that as well.
Yes, and I think this holds some real potential for particularly some of the more, not just the rural parts of the district, but also for the Norfolk portion of the district as well. There was a report by the 4 coastal planning district commissions that came out with a master plan for working waterfronts. There are 600 working waterfront sites in coastal Virginia. It employs about 120,000 people in marine industries and about an $8 billion contribution to Virginia's gross domestic product. And so what we want to try to do is give localities the tools, should they choose to use them, to encourage development of their working waterfronts. In some areas, it's a cultural thing, a heritage thing. They want to preserve it for those reasons. In other reasons, it's pure economic development. And so this gives the localities the ability to have working waterfront development zones where they can encourage the economic development of their working waterfronts.
One of the other issues you've been involved in for a number of years relates to coastal flooding. Is that still a very serious issue?
Yes, and will be. Very disappointed this year. I'm on the Recurrent Flooding Study Committee, which is chaired by Senator Locke and by Delegate Stolley. We came out with a series of recommendations this year, one of which was a cabinet-level post on coastal flooding and resiliency. I carried the Senate version of this. Delegate Stolley carried the House version. My bill made it through two committees, the Ag Committee, and then was reviewed by the Finance Committee. Made it out of both of those only to die on the floor of the Senate. And Delegate Stolley's met its fate in appropriations. So we're going to work together again after the session to see if there are things that the governor can do via executive order to sort of rearrange things. We have flooding activities through about a half a dozen different state agencies, and we need to coalesce them, and we need a one-point contact. It's also going to be important as we try to access additional federal infrastructure funds down the road that we have that. So I'm very concerned about that. In addition, I've put a bill in which is going to allow for localities to provide real estate tax relief to those individuals who choose voluntarily to perform remediation efforts on their improved real property. So I think that's going to be an incentive to homeowners to act on their own in some respects, to do be proactive in regard to flooding.
So that issue relates not only to public safety, it can relate to health, economic development, and also national security, given the number of military installations in your district.
Absolutely, all those things coalesce in this one topic. And so we have to be proactive, not only for our citizens' public safety and their quality of life, but again, as you said, for economic development, and also to make sure that the military knows that we are serious about dealing with this. They treat the problem seriously. Internally, they are dealing with it. When they put new infrastructure in, they are always planning for flooding and what is anticipated to be the sea level rise that's going to be experienced by Hampton Roads. So we need to show them, if we want to keep these facilities here and encourage new facilities, that we're serious about it as well.
Talk to us about the importance of our military, especially our veterans in your district. I think about 10% of the population of the Commonwealth is veterans, either on active duty or retired.
Absolutely, and that presents a great wealth of talent that we need to figure out how best to tap in. We need to not only honor those folks for their service, but also encourage them when they complete their service to stay in the region, and also find a way to make sure that they can have access to the opportunities that our economy offers them and the experience that they've gained.
Is there a new veteran center in the Hampton Roads area?
Yes, and the city of Norfolk has been very active in doing a one-stop shop for veterans as they exit their service, to try and tell them what is available to them in the Hampton Roads area and how we can best fit them in and maximize the use of their talents.
And we've got Virginia Values Veterans, which marries up veterans to private employment.
That has been a great program and has done some great things in doing just that, yes.
What about homelessness? How's the Commonwealth doing in terms of homelessness for its veterans?
Well, homelessness begs the additional question of what we're doing, I think, with mental health. And that has been a big focus of this General Assembly. And the governor, we've got 25 of our 45 community services boards are going to be engaging in a $8 million pilot program to get same-day assessments, mental health assessments, which has proved to be invaluable in the outcomes for mental illness. Same-day assessments and followed up within 10 days of an actual appointment to begin treatment. And also we're investing some significant money for jail programs so that we can do screening within our jails to make sure that folks that are there because of mental health issues get the appropriate treatment and are not just warehoused in our jails. And so a lot of that obviously impacts on the homelessness issue as well.
So a lot of those recommendations came out of the Deeds Commission, I assume.
Absolutely. Senator Deeds and the commission that bears his name are doing yeoman's work in what had unfortunately been an area of our core functions of government that had not received the attention that it needed, and now it is.
And of course, we're moving forward on another tragedy, this prescription opioid epidemic that not only affects the Commonwealth, but the entire United States now.
Absolutely. And the governor and Secretary Hazel, our Secretary of Health, have been doing great work in trying to figure out how best to deal with this burgeoning problem. Oftentimes unreported, simply because of the way we report these health incidents and these deaths. The underlying cause is oftentimes opioid addiction and opioid overdose, but it doesn't get reported that way. I know I've seen that and had that reported to me from some of our folks on the ground in the rural areas of the district on the Eastern Shore, that it is underreported.
And apparently some people have learned how to doctor shop, for example, and I think some of the recommendations dealing with that is a high-tech way of ensuring that the doctor in the next county knows that this patient has already been on a certain prescription.
Yes, and that became apparent to me as a legislator when Secretary Hazel traveled to Accomack County and had a conference of local folks, stakeholders, state police, community services board, rural health folks. It became apparent that that was a real issue. And so yes, we need to try and figure out how we can stop that.
And of course, unfortunately, it's created another problem to the extent you crack down on these prescriptions. People, unfortunately, are turning to heroin, apparently.
Yes, yes.
Talk to us about the budget in terms of education, especially raises for our state employees.
The governor, of course, had indicated early on we had raises scheduled. The economy proved sluggish. Revenues proved sluggish. Although I will point out that the most recent revenue report indicates that there is a continuing upward trend, probably a little too late to help us make any significant changes in this budget that we're going to adopt in a couple of weeks. But we do, both chambers, House and the Senate, have included actual raises as opposed to a one-time bonus in there. We've also done some significant things for state troopers, which were sadly lacking from a salary standpoint, losing people, unable to retain people. Those folks are on the front lines of our public safety. Obviously, we need to show them the respect that they deserve through their salary increase and also through compression issues, so we're working through that as well. K through 12 education is held harmless. We still need to do more.
Yeah, that's at 2009 levels,
yes,
I think.
That's why it's deceptive when we say we've held them harmless. Right. Standing still is not moving forward, and so we need to, as they used to say, a veteran legislator used to say up here, there are a lot of bills in the drawer, and certainly K through 12 public education is a bill in the drawer. We also need to take a hard look at higher ed. We're demanding some things of higher education. We want greater in-state students as opposed to out-of-state students represented in our fine public colleges and universities. We need to give them more money if we're going to do that, because that's been the first place we have gone in times of economic downturn, has been to higher ed, because we know that they will get their money through tuition increases.
And I'm sure you're getting complaints from students and their parents about
Absolutely.
that.
We've got a great system of public colleges and universities, but it doesn't do us any good if we can't access them. So.
Back to K through 12, that funding is going to be held harmless, as you indicate. How are we doing on implementing the reforms to the standards of learning?
We're very good, very well, and pleased to see that, again, it's on a bipartisan basis. You know, we talk about polarization and partisanship, but I think reforms of SOLs and testing and other reforms in public education in recent years in Virginia have been on a bipartisan basis, and very proud to see that. You know, the late Senator John Miller was a very devoted to education and education reforms during his time here in the state Senate. And the Virginia Profile of a Virginia Graduate was a bill that he initiated and a program that he initiated that we're still fleshing out about what we should expect of a Virginia high school graduate. And that, I think, is proving a very positive reform for public education.
And I take it that that same reform relating to standards of learning is now migrating to the high school level?
Yes, absolutely. And again, there was a realization finally that the testing, the high stakes testing, was being counterproductive. Sort of a law of unintended consequences was being applied. And resulting in, again, some unfortunate consequences. But I think we've realized that, and we're trying to pull back as much as we can.
Seems like there's more of an emphasis on dual enrollment with our high school students with some of the community colleges. Do you see that as a plus?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we passed a law a few sessions ago, requiring all community colleges have dual enrollment agreements with the school systems in which they served, and I think that's a very positive thing for us going forward.
Matter of fact, one of the highlights of the governor's address to the General Assembly a few weeks ago related to cybersecurity and the ability of a high school student with a certificate to get a job at about $80,000 a year starting.
Absolutely, and as you know, that cybersecurity is one of the pillars of the governor's new Virginia economy. There's great room in the cybersecurity sector of the economy going forward nationally, and the governor has committed Virginia to trying to seize upon that and build a real niche for cybersecurity in the Commonwealth.
And there are continued programs for veterans returning from theaters of war, for example, who have gained experience in the battlefield to translate that experience into college credit.
Yes, and that's been another effort that we've tried to make sure these folks get college credit for their service.
Talk to us a little bit more about what's going on in the Senate. You indicated that things are going rather smoothly this session, less bipartisan bickering. Is that because this is a short session, or have people really made friends over there now?
Well, I would like to think it's the return to civility that has been ebbing away from us. I'm not sure what the root cause is. I'm happy to see it. This is my 13th session. And I have seen a change over the years, and not necessarily in a positive way, in regards to polarization and the partisan rancor that you see at the national level. It is not anywhere nearly as bad as it is in Washington, but again, I can see a difference. And so I'm happy to have a relatively quiet session. There are still sharp policy differences. Sometimes they're on a regional basis and not a party basis. But again, we have not allowed that to impede the way we conduct business in the civil nature and collegial nature of the Senate.
Got about a minute and a half left. One of the issues that's been around for a long time deals with redistricting.
Yes.
We've had lawsuits on the federal level and the state level. Talk to us about the need for an independent or bipartisan commission to determine how those lines are drawn.
Well, anyone that has ever heard me speak to a group or a town hall meeting knows that this is an issue that I feel very passionately about. I think it is, without a doubt, the most important issue facing Virginia. I think these hyper-partisan districts and the way they've been drawn impedes our ability to deal with the big questions that we have to deal with. As I indicated earlier, proud to see us do some things on a bipartisan basis, but there are big questions out there, big issues that we're going to have to confront, and we need bipartisanship, and we have to get away from these districts. And I was proud to work with One Virginia 2021 again to try and bring some reforms about.
Great. Thank you for being with us, Senator Lynwood Lewis.
Thank you, Woody.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.